All right,
Hi.
there we go.
We have our friends from Sports Basement here today too. Nice to be here. So thank you. Thank you for the official first Fit Friday. The idea of this roundtable event is that we have two panelists, which I'll introduce in a second, and all of our special retailer guests who have decided to join us. I see Cisco just popped in. And we want this to be an open conversation. We're doing these once a month, and the idea is that our two panelists can share any recent trends, any things they're seeing at the retail level, in the fit world level that could be important, should be things you're up to speed on, and also answer any questions you have about fitting and how vital fitting is in the role of success of your shop. So fitting, we know, brings additional revenue. It keeps customers happy. It improves the overall cycling experience, reduces the risk of injury, adds joy. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But that's what this conversation is about, just why we want to keep fit at the top of our minds, and also staying really up to date with what changes, what progressions are happening in the world of fit. And so we have two people who have donated their time to help us on a monthly basis. So first, Damon Wyatt, he's the brand business manager at Bike Fit. And then we also have Greg Robidoux, who is the executive director of the Serrata International Cycling Institute. Two really great friends of mine. We were just talking kind of on air, but off air. So before everyone came in, just about the importance of these conversations and how we're just really excited to see who shows up and see where the conversation goes. So thank you for making it part of your day and prioritizing the conversation. Rochelle is also here. Rochelle is the development director at the MBDA. She's the glue that keeps everything together. So if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I know between myself and her, we'll be looking for them. You can also just unmute yourself and ask. We're not gonna, this is very open. Anything kind of goes, unless it gets crazy, then I might have to lock it down a little bit. But, we are recording today for people who couldn't be here live with us. So just be mindful of that. Let's keep it kind and try not to use too much negative, bad words. I don't know. The other day we had a meeting where all sorts of bad words came out. So we're going to try to keep this one PG or PG-13. So, but let's kick it off with some basic introductions. I'll let Damon, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about your role at Bike Fit.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. And I'm from New Jersey, so I'll try to keep the language down, but that's just a natural inclination. So you're gonna have to bear with me on that one. Again, I'm Damon. I am the brand business manager for Bike Fit, which is owned by QBP, was acquired by QBP in 2020. I consider myself more of a father of a rambunctious four-year-old, a husband, a mediocre guitarist, a lover of movies. I just bought Speed 4K Ultra. Because that is a great movie in 1994. If you want to see Keanu Reeves at his best, that's just the way to go. But realistically, I think the big stuff that I do with QBP now as brand manager for Bike Fit is really championing fit, making fit part of an inseparable part of every bike shop, every retailer, and it's something that's going to be incorporated more in U of Q going forward in the future, and something where I'm excited for these because I like to learn from all of you, because I don't get the same experience to be in the shop every day to get the feedback. I do talk to a lot of fitters. Greg knows this. We talk to each other, but sometimes it's awesome just to hear different opinions, and hopefully you'll find that I can provide some valuable insights to you and your business going forward.
Thank you, Damon. All right, Greg, your turn. Will you introduce yourself and Serrata International Cycling Institute?
Absolutely. I'm coming to you today from my wife's office because I actually have to run as soon as we're done today to go get my children. So I couldn't come to you from SICI Central, but that's why you have the fun backdrop here. But I am the executive director of the Serrata International Cycling Institute. I have been a bike fitter for the last 25 years myself. I'm a physical therapist by trade and also run the cycling medicine program for Spalding Rehab. And treat cyclists and triathletes. So I have the unique opportunity to be able to work on both sides of the bicycle. I am able to work on the human who rides the bike as well as work on the bicycle. And it's one of the things that's definitely filtered into the ethos of the Serrata International Cycling Institute, because you can't separate the human and the bicycle. And in order to improve that human's experience, we need to involve them in the process. And a lot of our education is about that. It's about learning about the individual. It's about education. It's about improving the overall cycling experience. And I wake up every day feeling very lucky to have the opportunity to talk to retailers like those of you who are here today, and educate them and help. What I hope is improve the cycling experience for all those that get in touch with a fitter that we've had the opportunity to help educate. So thank you all for being here. And I also need to take a moment just to thank Heather and Rochelle and Damon for all of their insights and wisdom, and their ability to give us a platform to have this discussion, because as Damon and I will undoubtedly express, is this is really important to us. It's really important to this industry, I think, and that the more we can do to improve the cycling experience, the better retention of cyclists we have, the better experience they have riding bikes, and everybody's happier. We was at a trade show recently, and somebody was saying that lifting all the boats in the harbor, right? And so that's what we have the opportunity to do. We have the opportunity not only to improve the experience of the person riding the bike, but we have an opportunity to improve the retail experience. We also have the opportunity to make some additional money, which is always a good thing in the cycling industry. So yeah, that's why we're here. That's what we want to talk about, and any light that we can shed on that, we hope that we can do. So thank you all for being here and taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us. Thank you.
Greg, you're superhuman. I was looking over our podcast, our Bicycle Retail Radio podcast. I can see how many people have listened to each podcast last night. And the two that really got a lot of traction was there's great opportunity in the bike industry now, huge potential now. And then the second one was about fitting and why fitting is so important. Those are like our two most listened podcasts. So I was using that as kind of information, thinking about going in today. And if we want to get better, we have to show up. We have to make these times to learn. And we also have to really pay attention to what's happening and see how that might be applicable to our own business, what's happening in the industry and how we might want to consider that. So I want to start with what has happened since a month ago, or a couple of weeks ago, when we came together to talk about fit. Anything new, any concepts, any thoughts? Let's go to our experts that are running through your mind that our retailers should be aware of in the fit world. Damon, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm so torn because there's two things I want to talk about, but we'll see. Probably one will come back. I just got a link sent to me from a fitter on Colorado, and and by the way, I'm trying not to have an opinion on this. This is more just, I want to talk about it with retailers so you just know the situation, because my promotion here is for you as retailers to create experiences and have this cyclical, awesome, people staying in cycling. What Greg said, I loved, right? But what they sent me was, and I've seen this before, and this has been kind of pandemic related business level, which is, it says AI powered online bike fit. So the idea is that the owners behind it will have an app, and they will ask cyclists to download the app. It will get on your bike, set up your camera, take this video, send it back to us, and we're gonna, for $35, tell you all the changes you have to make to have a great experience. I don't want to give you my opinion on what I think of that. What I want you to know is that they wouldn't have created a business if they didn't think that people needed this, right? Like, I think Greg and I could probably champion this for hours and tell you that every single person that's on a bike needs a fit. But the fact that they're trying to go directly consumer, which maybe some of this harkens to some of you of like the direct to consumer bike sales idea, is we're missing a valuable piece there, in my opinion, which is the connection. We're missing the connection between body and bike from you as the bike shop owner or bike shop person who's there as a specialist, and that continued relationship. Just because you are fit one time or you have one experience doesn't mean that negates that you're ever going to need anything again or need another bike or something else. So I bring this to your attention to know that people are looking for that piece of business, or potentially there's consumers who want that. And it's something you should be aware of. If, how are you promoting what you do? How are you talking about fit in your shop? How are you incorporating fit to your customers so that that experience is connected to your business and not just to an online platform that someone's creating?
Great question. What do you guys think? Does anyone have any feedback or thoughts on that?
I don't know if I can hold my tongue on that one. Damon has opened a can of worms here that I
Yeah, it's like, watch out, Greg. We're gonna mute Greg now. I'm joking.
you may have to. So I'd like to start by saying that, you know, I mirror what Damon's saying, is that if that is being created, that there's an obvious need. There are people that want that service, right? And I understand the fear base in not wanting to get sick, right? I mean, COVID is a real thing, and it is something that has limited access to this type of service. And to be clear, I think there are aspects of that probably could be successful, but one of the trends, and we were talking about, you know, what are the trends that we're seeing, and one of the trends that I have seen, that I feel as though from an education standpoint I've had to work hard at undoing, is that there have been several companies that sell technology as far as bike fit is concerned, and many of the consumers believe that the technology is the bike fit, and whether that be a particular type of size cycle, whether that be a particular type of motion capture, and I'm not going to name any names there, but unfortunately what's happened is many consumers believe that they need that thing in order to be fit, and in order to be fit well. And my fear when we start representing something like online access to bike fit is that if we're calling that bike fit, people will believe that it's bike fit. And there are some really significant problems, in my estimation, with that particular thing. And at the most basic level, I think Damon's nailed it. I mean, that human connection, that is one of the most powerful things that you are able to make when you're doing bike fit, right? As a retailer in a shop environment, you have interactions with your customers that walk in the door, but fit offers this opportunity to open a door, to look through the window into someone that you would not normally get the opportunity to do. And you're developing a friend. You're developing someone who now feels like they're invested in your shop or your fitting business. And I think that there's immense value in that, from not just the, you know, taking in the dollars for the bike fit, but retaining that person now in the future. And I think that you know, one of the things that has sometimes plagued the bike industry is that we don't see much past our noses, and you know, it's about making the sale of that bike that, you know, you're desperate to get rid of because you got to make room for other things coming in. As opposed to, let's see if we can create somebody that's a cyclist for life. And I think bike fit is one of those opportunities to be able to do that. Now, with that said, I have to bring up the fact that I think that there are real present dangers in calling an online assessment a bike fit. Number one, the cameras that we're using right now to look at ourselves, to record this, are not adequate for being able to evaluate somebody on a bicycle. You can look at posture, you can look at a lot of things, but they're wonderful pieces of technology. I don't know whether this is square to where I'm facing right now, which is going to significantly affect the angles that I'm looking at if I'm overlaying that with an app or some program to evaluate angles. I also don't know the abilities of the person that is now going to make changes to their bicycle that I am suggesting that they make. I now own a piece of liability with the idea of them making changes that I've suggested, and they are now going to make, I don't know if they know how to tighten a bolt properly. I don't know if they know how to tension a headset. And there are individuals that absolutely know those things. They could probably do it in their sleep, but I don't know that through the computer. And it would be a very difficult thing for me as a fitter, because it's very easy for somebody to be like, oh yeah, sure, I know how to, I work on my bike all the time. Yeah, what does that mean, right? So I would say that I think this is a real discussion, and I think that there are some things that can definitely be looked at and assessed, maybe more like sizing or something like that. But to effectively call it bike fit, I think is a real big mistake, not only for the experience of what they're going to get out of that, because they're going to lose out on an awful lot of what you have expertise in doing as a bike fitter. But I also think that it does a disservice to what someone like myself or other bike fitters in the room do. I spend a lot of time with people, and quite frankly, it's not an easy, bike fit is not an easy thing. I said this, and I say this a lot. Bike fit it's complicated. It requires time, it requires attention, and it requires a significant amount of knowledge to be able to digest the information that comes in and find a good result for folks. And it's not formulaic. It's not, people are not formulaic. We all know that, right? The example that I oftentimes give in these situations is that I actually had the opportunity to fit a pair of identical twin boys that were both Cat 1 bike racers. And their fits were, although all of their body parts were identical in every way, their fits were completely different because their needs were different. The way they raced bikes were different. The bikes that they were on were different. They raced on different teams. It requires some thought process, and that's not easy. And it's not always cut and dry. It's not always clean. Sometimes there's follow up, and there's a process behind what you're doing in order to really find a good result for somebody. And that takes time, that takes effort. And I think, in my estimation, it's best done face to face. That's me. That's my opinion. You take it for what it's worth.
No, Greg, it's great because I have to tell you, I've Zoomed with so many people. And I think the first time I met Cisco in person, N+1 Cycler, he said, wow, you look different in person than you do in photos or something like that. So it's so true. Like you can't, yeah, great topic to bring up, Damon. Great thing. I want to just turn it over now and see if I said we have a bunch of people who have joined us. Welcome to Fit Fridays. Any questions for our fitters? Anything you're struggling with? Cisco.
Yes, my question is like trying to explain to people when we do the fitting here is that they think they are in this state of mind that is one-time shot. I mean, I tell them you're gonna shrink if you're gonna continue doing this, and especially on your spine. So I've been recommending do a fitting, then come back to a follow-up like about a year. And then after that, maybe a couple of years from there. But it's nothing that you just do one time and that's it. And people think like, oh, you just want my money. See, no, this is our nature to shrink. And as you shrink, like I used to race on the 55, 56 centimeter bike just to be broad, open. Mm-hmm. But now I'm riding 53s. So all my 55s are just hanging on the wall now. So is this something, am I giving them the right direction, or is this something else that I should educate them?
Yeah, who wants to take this one?
I'll gladly do it. Greg, I know we probably both have thoughts on this, so I'll gladly jump in. Cisco, that question is fantastic. And I would tell you your role and what you're doing, and I think anybody else in this room could say the same thing when they've had consumers come to them. There is a lot of not a lot of great information, or maybe there's too much information, let's call that exists on the internet in the world. And so you kind of find the answers you want to find, or you find what's out there. So let me take a step back, and I promise I'll answer your question. So my understanding, without doing heavy surveying, is when Greg was talking about like what a bike fit was or wasn't, I don't know that consumers know what a bike fit is, right? Like, and I don't even know that all of us in this room would agree on what a bike fit is. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of definitions of it. So yes, you're in a really interesting role because you're explaining the value of it to them, and you're also educating them on where does this exist in the continuum of time. And I receive a lot of calls with similar question. Basically, people would call me. I used to do customer service for Bike Fit, and they would call and they'd say, you know, hey, I've been developing some knee pain and having some issues. And I go, when was the last fit? And they go, oh, I got fit 12 years ago, so I should be fine. But can you fix the knee pain? And I was like, you know, so I think it's more of an educational piece there, that you're doing the right thing, right? If somebody is getting a new bike, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? A new bike, I don't care what bike brand you go with, they're going to be different, right? So there's a million different reasons why a bike could be different. If they're on the same bike and you're trying to educate them on how often, I tell people this all the time. You could change jobs, you could be more sedentary, you could have injuries, you could be aging, your body changes, right? You said it for the height. Yeah, your height changes from in the morning to the evening. You're a different size, your spine compresses, and yes, we shrink over time due to the horrible nature of gravity, which is super amazing when it comes to fitting. So I think you are doing the right thing by explaining to someone that. I mean, the consumer, let's call it from a service standpoint. Do a consumer come in and you do service on their bike, and they go and you say, hey, you're going to need to come and do a tune-up every year, or hey, you're tubeless, you know, it needs help every 3 to 6 months, depending on how much you ride, and they go, you're just trying to take my money? Well, no, that you could not follow my advice and your chain could fall off, or your tires could get messed up. So what you're really telling them is like, hey, I'm trying to provide you with the best experience. And I'm also doing this for safety, you know, confidence. You know, this isn't something I'm just trying to sell you on. And my hope is that as you do this with customers, their response to it would change that opinion, right? Like how they feel about what you did changes that. So sorry, that was a very long answer. I think you're doing the right thing, but I think it's just people just don't know. They really don't.
And you know, I'd like to echo that, and I'd also like to say that, you know, my opportunity again is because I have the opportunity to do this from both sides. So I'm seeing folks not just for bike fit purposes, but also because they've been injured because of the bike. And there are times when I have to bring their body to the bike, and then other times when I have to bring the bike to their body. And I have you know, I'm lucky enough to have the credentials and the training to be able to do that. We are not sedentary beings, right? Our bodies evolve as we age, as we change. Your body evolves to a degree within a season, right? I mean, we start off in the beginning of a season, our flexibility isn't quite as good as it was, and you'll see folks that will move deeper into a position as the year progresses, as they get more miles under their belt, as they lose some weight, as they have injuries. All of these things are reasons to revisit fit. And I think there's an opportunity there, not only for education, but I also think that, you know, maybe sometimes that we think about this from a financial standpoint in the wrong way, right? You know, people, you know, as a healthcare individual, it frustrates me to no end that this is not something that's covered by your health insurance. You know, this is something that you're doing something to improve your body. And as a result of that, like Damon said, just like your bike needs maintenance, your body needs maintenance. And that maintenance involves maybe doing some flexibility, maybe doing some strengthening off of the bike, but also adjusting your biomechanics to match what your body can do at that moment. And, you know, it's interesting because I oftentimes will have people that will come to me, I don't want to say as a last resort, but they've been through other fitters before. They've had either, you know, a good or a bad experience, and but for whatever reason they're hurting, and they come to me, and the question that inevitably comes up is like, well, did my other fitter screw up and injure me, right? And my honest answer typically has to be like, I can't say one way or the. I don't know what you looked like when you had that fit done, right? That fitter may have been responding to the way that your body was 6 months ago or 3 months ago, and your body may be different today. So all I can tell you is what I see today and where I think your body needs to be now, and how I see that progressing in the near future. And yes, there should absolutely be follow-up. One of the things that, there should be immediate follow-up, meaning that you do your bike fit. And I talk about this with my students, is that I'm from New England. There's a shop here that's it's called the Yankee Candle Store. Is anybody familiar with Yankee Candle? Yes. They have every conceivable scent of candle that you can think of. If you have ever decided to go into this store and have your olfactory system completely overwhelmed, by the fourth or fifth candle that you've put up to your nose, you start to get to the point of going like, wow, all these candles smell exactly the same, right? And there's a point in bike fit where all of the changes that you're making smell the same for that person, right? And so our bodies can absorb a certain amount of change, and then people start getting numb to those changes. And so most people can tolerate 2 to 3 hours of work with their body and make some pretty substantial changes to the bike. But then they need some time away. They need to clear their palate, and they need to feel it. They need to experience it, and then they need to come back and give you some feedback. And so typically when I'm doing bike fitting, if I'm spending a 2-hour bike fit with somebody, I'm expecting that they're coming back to me with, depending upon how much they ride, if I've got a really avid cyclist, maybe they're coming back in a week, or, if they're riding 20 hours a week, they're going to know by the end of that week how their body feels. If I've got somebody that's riding once or twice a week, it might take them 4 or 6 weeks to really feel the change, and then they're going to come back and we're going to do any touch up that we need to do, because they're actually going to have many more data points for them to say, all right, I've been able to walk away from this candle for a little while and smell it again, and then walk away and smell it again, and I've decided that I like aspects of this smell, but it's not smell I was looking for, right? Or they walk in and they're like, it is my favorite scent ever. I'm going to put it in every room of my house, right? And so the reality is that from a consumer side, I think having that discussion with somebody and saying, hey, listen, this is a service that has a value to it. And yes, there has to be a cost associated with that. One of the things that some successful shops have done is they've said, all right, listen, your first fit is whatever our marked price is. But if you're committing to coming back to fits every couple of years or every year or whatever it is, then you're going to have a discounted rate at, whatever it is, right? Whatever you feel like still adds value, and values your time, but also allows them to get into it and not feel as though that you're taking advantage of them. Now, with that said, I have some folks that want to come back every 6 months. And most people, in my experience, I charge, just to be totally transparent, I charge $350 for a bicycle fit. And it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 hours plus a little bit of follow-up, right? And I don't skimp on that, because it's just what I believe I need in order to deliver the product that I want to deliver. And once the people have had that experience and they feel that they've been educated, they feel like I'm really invested in them, I've offered oftentimes to say, hey, you saw me last year, it was $350. I'll cut that in half for you this year. And most people are like, no, it's okay. It's absolutely worth it to me. And there's always going to be somebody that wants the deal, because that's the nature of cycling. But I can't tell you how many people that I've offered to give them a discount, and they will say, oh, okay, that's great. And then they write me a check for my full amount. So it's worth it. And I think if you invest the time and you offer that experience, it's really exceptional. People will see the value and they'll understand that it's not there to rake them over the coals and just try to drag more money out of them. You're truly doing it to improve their cycling experience. And I've said this, and I've said this in these Zooms before, so forgive me if you're hearing it again. But I say that investing in a bicycle is an investment in a piece of equipment. Buying or investing in a fit is investing in yourself, right? And that is, in my estimation, way more important than the piece of equipment that you're buying. Is the investment in yourself.
I like that. That was a great question, Cisco.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Thanks. You point out, Greg, about the insurance, that it should be included in the insurance. What I partnered with one of the best chiropractor in my area, and he is a cyclist also.
Yep.
So I did a fitting on him, and he is a chiropractor. I did a fitting on him, and he on his 5 bikes, all 5 bikes different, completely different. He's a mountain biker and cyclocross.
Yep.
So what he's been doing is referring us, because by referring us, the client can take that receipt to him and it'll be included in their insurance, because it becomes a recommendation. It's like sending you to the pharmacy to get the medication.
Yep.
So maybe if you know any chiropractor that willing to do that in your area, I will recommend it, because it has increased the footprint here, the traffic, the foot traffic, drastically. And I wasn't expecting that, but then he's like, I did a decent job. I could have done better, but he was pretty happy with it. He's a very nice guy. But the people that we have done, they have come with his notes. What should I be focusing?
Yep.
And it's just an idea.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I think that there's a massive amount of value in being able to, from a shop environment, have a medical consultant, have somebody that you can refer back and forth to, have open conversations with. And there are times when, if you're a fitter without a medical qualification, that you should realize that what's going on with that person in front of you is, and this is not a slight, is just above your pay grade, right? You can do what you can do with that person, but then there should be a responsibility for you to also pass that person on to a medical professional that can continue to help them. And finding someone and doing some fits for them so they understand the experience, I think, is probably the most powerful way to gain an ally with a medical professional. The way that I've gotten around, the way insurance sees bike fit is that's a return to sport. And there are some folks out there that charge for it. I know that they do. I work for a relatively large rehab hospital. They're pretty conservative, and my understanding is that there's a pretty high likelihood that you're going to get a lot of chargebacks from insurance if you're billing bike fit. And for you to do bike fit and calling it something else technically is insurance fraud. Technically. So the way that I get around that really is I do all of my evaluative stuff in a physical therapy appointment, because that is what a physical therapy appointment is about. And then any of the additional on bike stuff I'm able to do in my office. And because I'm able to get a lot of, most of my physical assessment, my history, all of that stuff done in the office, I can significantly cut down on the time and then reduce my fees because I've pulled in a lot of that capital already through another source. And so that's, from a medical professional standpoint, is another way to do it that I think is legitimate and would not cause any pause with regards to an insurance company saying, no, we're not going to pay for that.
Yeah, no insurance fraud here. Damon, you had something to add to?
I was just going to agree with Greg. Surprise. I talked to we in the past, Bike Fit had trained a lot of PTs, right? And so the first question they would ask me was, "What's the code to get Bike Fit covered?" And I was like, "Don't do that. Like, don't do that." But I love what you're talking about, the incorporation. I wanted to echo just what Greg said about the idea that humans are asymmetrical, and a lot of us are pretty jacked up. And honestly, this is not statistically based, but most of us are reactive and not proactive, right? We seek help when we're in pain, but likely there was something that happened before that process before we actually sought that help. So I think having a good referral source around you, connecting with PT or chiropractor, could only behoove you and creates a relationship. The power in a connection relationship with a customer is the ability to be able to say, hey, I think this is the best thing for you. Having their interests in mind as the most important thing will beget benefits to you in the future from the, hey, I know that Greg did right by me. Like, Greg could have probably seen me, but he knows that this specialty is somebody else's and had the wherewithal to try to send me to somebody else. And that's meaningful. So I feel like I think it's a good topic. We could probably talk about this longer, but it's something that I want to stress and emphasize that from the consumer standpoint, that means a lot. I know I've seen that with other businesses where they've actually referred somebody else because it's a better fit. And while you're like, okay, I lost that business in a sense, you also probably gained a customer who's like, wow, if they're willing to do that, they clearly care more about me than they do about this sale.
This is a great conversation. I mean, any other questions? Greg, welcome. Andrew, I see you're here. Andrea, anyone have any questions about fit? Maybe something you're struggling with in your own story.
I want to kind of follow up a little bit on that stuff, where I guess the question would be how I stopped doing fittings except for basic setup and started referring people. And Greg, your name still comes up all the time, and let me know if I should still be throwing your name out. Okay. So, but my concern with doing the fittings again is the problem customers, the people who, how do you deal with the people who are like, well, my neck's still hurting. My neck's still hurting. Oh, you fit me again, but my neck's still hurting. Is that a case where, you know what I'm talking about with that kind of customer, right? And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the billing of that and that kind of thing?
That's a great question.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So I think that's oftentimes a no-brainer as far as saying, hey, from a biomechanical standpoint, I no longer think that it's the bike that's causing that pain. Right now, one of the things that you could say is like, hey, if you come to me and your saddle area is red hot, right? It doesn't matter what saddle I put underneath your butt, it's probably going to hurt. Right. And, I've had folks that have come in that, for a bike fit that I've sent home because they were like, well, I rode 70 miles this morning before my fit and I'm really hurting. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that you were able to get a 70-mile ride in. But what's going to happen now is that's going to make it really difficult for you to differentiate what's positive and what's negative. So let's maybe reschedule this for a day that you're not doing such a heavy workout, so that we can actually start with a clean slate and kind of understand where your body is, right? I think that's also a reason why you might say, hey, listen, we've gone and done things that should make a positive change in the way that you feel. From my biomechanical understanding, the bike isn't the trigger for that. There may be other triggers as well. So oftentimes that's something that's really critical for understanding when you start asking your history and taking the time to do that, because if I've got somebody who's a computer engineer, right? And what they do on a day-to-day basis is they wake up in the morning, they make their coffee, they get in their car and they drive to work, and then they sit at their desk and they do this all day, and then they want to go get some exercise afterwards, so they ride a bike like this, and then by the end of the day, they're kind of like this, right? Because everything they've done in their life is in flexion. And they say, Greg, you know what, man, you did this fit, my neck is killing me. I'm like, how many hours did you spend on your computer today before you got on your bicycle? Have you had your eyes checked recently? Because when our eyes fatigue, your head comes forward and it starts to impact the muscles and the joints in your neck. And so there are oftentimes extenuating circumstances that are perpetuating that pain. And this is a great question that Steve asks, right? Because we think that we're taking the time, we're being conscious, we're being careful, and you're like, all right, the changes that I've made should have made some sort of an impact, right? Positive or negative, right? But oftentimes that person's like, yeah, it's the same. And you're like, what do I do with this person now? Because I've used all the tools in my toolbox and it doesn't feel like it's moving forward. That's when you have to dig under the surface a little bit more and say, hey, okay, so I've employed a lot of the things that I know how to use with regards to position on the bike and what this bike is capable of doing with regards to your body, right? Because sometimes there are changes that we can make on a bike that compromise the bike too much to bring the bike to someone's body, right? One of the struggles that I see with my physical therapists, who are incredibly smart people, as are most of my bike, almost all of my bike fitters, and all of my shop people that come and take these classes. The issue that we run into sometimes is that medical professionals don't understand the connotations of what the geometry of the bike can do. So let's say we've got a bicycle that they've decided to put 5 centimeters of spacers on with a 25-degree, 60 millimeter stem, which effectively makes that stem about 40 millimeters, and now significantly changes the handling of that bike. Do you think that's going to reduce their neck pain? Because now the bike isn't going to handle very well, and it's going to make that bike slightly terrifying to ride. And that's probably going to make those muscles tighten up just because of the reaction to the way the bicycle handles. So, even the medical professionals out there, they really rely on your expertise from the shop to be able to say, hey, the trail on this bike is going to make it really difficult for you to put a stem that's that short and at that angle on this bike, because the bike is not going to handle the way that it was intended to handle, which is not going to improve the experience of that rider. Quite conversely, it will probably make that bike scary to handle, which will probably increase their tightness in their neck and shoulders, and have them white knuckling the bike. And so having this symbiotic relationship of people who really understand the equipment and understand how that equipment is going to best work works really well in concert with somebody that understands the human body. So having those relationships, I think, is paramount if you can make them. I hope that somewhat answers your question, Steve. I kind of got on a tangent there.
No.
Yeah, can I jump in? I wanted to see one other thing I just wanted to throw in, and this is Greg's answer is correct, 100%. I agree with him. But here's the thing that from a reframing standpoint, and believe me, I'm not in your position, so I don't know the full story. But what I'm hearing is like the same person who came in for a fit with you keeps coming back to say that they have pain. To me, that's way better than you fitting them and them never coming back again, right? Never coming to you, never talking to you. So at least they complain to you. They either A, have some kind of significant vendetta, or B, they trust you and they want an answer from you and they're using you as that source. So I would say try to keep that connection, right? And I think that referral is great there, but like look at it as at least this customer is coming back, right? Like this is not for you, but this is like we were talking about this prior to this call. Was there's a lot of message boards that express some complaints about some ways that customers do, which I will admit, being in customer service for 5 years, I felt it, right? But at the same time, I had to take a step back and tell myself, at least they're talking to me, At least they're not quitting cycling. At least they're not like leaving here. But if they're still coming to me, I have an opportunity. So I know it doesn't give you an answer, but I wanted to kind of reframe that.
Yeah, they want to have a good experience.
Yeah, I love the way that Greg, you go into it so great, and I understand it completely when you explain it. And Damon, thank you for following up. That's why I love having two people on the panel to kind of both give advice. Great questions. Any other questions that we can ask the panelists concerning fit in our retail environment, and how we can, improve or work better with clients?
Well, I'll jump in again then. So I have another thing to talk about is in terms of the technology. So I do consider a lot of the camera systems and so forth the technology, but when I see certain fitters with those like purely custom fitting bikes, and you watch them fit somebody, you see their videos and you can see the person on the bike and you're like, oh, that doesn't look good. And they literally turn the crank and zip up the bars and so forth. And in 30 seconds, they've radically altered everything. And you watch the person come into like, oh, you're like, oh, look at that. That looks so much better. That fitting bike is technology, but really it's also, it's not the same kind of technology. It is making things so much faster and easier. And to me, without that, the old school method just all of a sudden becomes, this is just pointless without one of those things. That kind of goes through my head.
Sure.
So I guess that's kind of just kind of talking about doing the fittings the sort of old school way and with that new technology, like that's behind you, I guess, in those pictures there, Greg.
Yeah, and so Damon, I'm gonna jump right in on this if that's okay. The reality is that some people are constrained by their finances or what they perceive their finances to be with regards to how much of an investment they can make. SciCycle is not inexpensive, right? Even if you're looking at our basic one, which is still a really great device, you're still talking about like $9,000 plus delivery, right? In order to get one into your shop. That's not a paltry sum of money. That's a decent amount of investment, and absolutely 1,000%. As far as the hierarchy of investments that you can make, I think it's one of the better investments to make for a variety of reasons. Number one, because you can move very quickly from one position to another, right? That's number one. The person also doesn't have to have a bike with them in order for you to do a bike fit. You can say, all right, well, let's see what your body tells us, and let's find a bike that suits that, right? And to Damon's point, it very well may be that you don't have a bike in your arsenal that's going to fit that person. But if you're truly invested in what's going to happen with them, you may have the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I don't have this bike, but I know somebody who does, and we're going to make sure that you get that. And that person's going to be like, what? Really? You're not going to sell me just whatever you have on the floor? And you can say things like, well, listen, the bike that I have that most closely fits is going to put you, I'm just making up an example, is going to put you at the extreme end of what that bike can accommodate. The bike will fit you in that position, but it's going to fit you at the end of its range. And if your body changes in one direction versus the other, that bike may no longer fit you. And that's not going to happen super frequently because bikes are pretty darn adjustable, but that may happen, right? And the other piece of that is that, on a lot of the bikes that we're seeing these days with these, integrated cockpits and different things like that, the idea of being able to maneuver the front end of that bike is next to impossible, right? And so, when we're dealing with high-end bikes, if you're doing what you would call the kind of traditional method of bike fitting, where you put the person on a trainer and you're on their bike and you're doing all of the corrections to their bike, you're turning bolts on that bike multiple times, which the more you do that, the higher the likelihood of you stripping a bolt or over torquing or breaking something, right? As opposed to doing it all in the SciCycle and then transferring that data once, right? And so in a lot of ways, it definitely streamlines the process. Whereas sometimes motion capture does not streamline the process, right? Because now we're adding another layer to what we're doing. It has to be set up, ideally it's set up permanently, which isn't the reality for a lot of shops. And so you're having to take the time to set up and break down your motion capture. And there's a lot to doing that, which now invades the amount of time it takes you to actually do your fit. The other thing in recent years, as things have become a little bit more affordable, that I think is a really strong consideration for a first investment in technology is some sort of pressure mapping for saddles, because the price points on a lot of this stuff has come down significantly, and it's the one area that you can't see with your eyeballs. I mean, you can see the result of what's happening based on posture and sometimes on feedback, but we all have words for how our hands feel or our neck or our back feel. That's in the common vernacular as far as like, oh, I'm having this ache or it's feeling sharp or dull. Many people don't know how to or are not willing to describe the sensations they're feeling in their pelvis. And this ends up opening a whole nother can of worms with regards to the fact that there are oftentimes a situation when you're in a bike shop that's filled with a bunch of dudes and you've got a female cyclist that walks in that's having issues with her private parts that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable exposing that to a room full of guys. Creating a fit environment where no matter what you're packing below the belt, you feel open and available to having that conversation. This is a much bigger conversation than probably we could even enter into today. But the idea that in addition to bringing improving the experience of riding bikes, we also have a responsibility to bring the individuals who are not necessarily the archetypical cyclist into the fold, whether that means they're a larger human, whether that means they're incredibly tall, incredibly small, male, female, transgender, whatever that is. Being able to create an environment as a fitter that is open and allows for those conversations to happen is an additional layer of challenge to providing really good service if you're choosing to do bike fit. And so when I say that bike fit is messy, it is. It's something, if you're going to do it, you need to commit wholeheartedly to it. And I say that not to dissuade you from doing it, because I think it is massively valuable. But it is something that if you're going to do, you should do it all the way. You shouldn't do it halfway. You should do it all the way. I'm going to let Damon weigh in. And
we have a question from Andrew. I see Andrew's finger.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll respond to it, Greg.
Actually, my question, it doesn't really refer to this. It was another subject.
Okay, you can't ask it. No, it's okay.
Okay. So I was questioning whether, everyone here is on Zoom. Most of the shops, they're going to have multiple stores with multiple fitters at different locations. And, whether you're a new bike fitter or an older bike fitter, possibly even set in your ways, if you're certified, retool, fit, whatever it is, how can we continue to grow as bike fitters? If we're living in our own little bubble and not being exposed to, I made this mistake, or I'm seeing this, tips from other people. I don't know if you have any ideas on that. Or
well, I think platforms like this go a long way into doing that. Having, the NBDA offer up a forum to say, hey, what are the questions of the day as far as bike fit are concerned? What are the trends that you're seeing? What are the issues that you're running into in delivering a good product? What are the perceived needs that people have, and what are the actual needs that people have? I think platforms like this and discussions like this will continue to grow that base of knowledge. And then outside of that, and Damon and I have talked about this extensively, is like continue to educate yourself. Like, just because you have an SICI certification doesn't mean you shouldn't have a bike fit certification. The way that I express something, the way that I teach something may not resonate with every person that takes my coursework. And although Damon might say the same thing, the way he says it might click. It might turn that light bulb on for you, and it's got value to it. And just like in physical therapy, where you're expected to continue to educate yourself throughout your career, I think if you choose to do bike fit, being curious and being and seeking out that information is something you should continue to do. And you don't have to agree with me or with Bike Fit or with Dan Enfield or with Specialized or with Trek or Guru, but understanding their perspective and pulling what you feel is valuable out of that has an inherent value. I in our coursework, I include as many resources as possible for other bike fit schools, right? I think that that's a really important thing for me to do, is to say, don't take my word for it. If you can shoot a hole in what my presentation is, please do it, because that's going to make my deliverable much better. And so, as Damon said at the start of all of this, we learn so much from having these conversations with you, because you're on the ground. You're dealing with it every day, right? And you're outside of our bubble. And we're the ones that are providing some of this educational resource. And so every class that I teach, I get the opportunity to make improvements to what it is that I teach. And not that what I taught 10 years ago wasn't valuable, but what I teach for my next class, I want it to be even more valuable than the class that I just taught. So,
Damon, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, Andrew, you're talking about just you as a fitter want continuing education to continue your journey and learn more. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I agree with Greg. I would also say, oh man, be careful what you ask for. If you email me, I will connect you with somebody who will relentlessly call you every week and connect you to every fitter in the United States on a regular basis. So if you like that, I can provide that to you. The second thing is, there are a couple of Facebook groups out there that are kind of fitters talking to fitters and kind of discussing what's going on. I wish there was more. Like I think the trade shows being impacted. Like Interbike used to have a fit symposium, and even though I thought it was a ridiculous sales fest where people lied about how much money they would make from fitting, there was some good stuff there. There was people promoting, there was people talking with fit, there were small group sessions. So I think we probably need more, but as Greg said, this is a great place to start. And as this group gets bigger, which I think it will because of the level of interest and what it brings to the cyclist, we probably will end up creating more or breaking out, or when it becomes too much for us, I think it'll be a good thing to say, hey, we definitely have a community here which is giving back, and we need to create more things for them.
Yeah, I echo that. Greg and I, this was kind of brainstormed out of like conversations that have been rolling, and then Damon was involved. And so we don't know where we're going, but we're all growing together. So be part of it, and we'll see what we can continue to add. And yeah, Damon can connect you to lots of people. I know Greg can too. And none of us are working against each other. We're all really working together. So any ideas, I'm an open door, like throw them at me and I'll do the best I can to make them happen as quickly as possible. Gosh, it's 2:00 already. I hate to wrap this up. It's like, oh my God, but I feel like we should. Is there anything else pressing that anyone else had that we want to just take a moment before?
I have to jump in. Steve, wait, I have to respond. Greg, this is the only topic where you and I are going to disagree, but I think it's just in the good feeling of giving information out. So Steve, to Greg's point about that idea of, you look at the, a size cycle and what it can provide for the cyclist. And I'm not going to deny that it's fantastic. It gives a ridiculously cool experience. And you can even see people's body change as you do that. Yeah. If you're thinking about, okay, hey, your shop, you want to get back into this or provide more than the basic fit you were talking about, I disagree that you need to go all in to start. I disagree from it because for me, my thought in hierarchy when I've been working with shops and working with people is you will have better results building that from a sense of your environment. Everybody in your shop talks the same way about fit. You come to a conclusion that you have the same phrasing. It's almost like a brand is starting to explain itself, and everybody has the same conversation. It's like if you're going to sell a pair of shoes, you're going to sell a stem, everybody knows the specs about that stem and it shouldn't be different. But in some places and shops, if you ask employee A, employee B, they'll tell you two totally different things about fit. Whether one person who says it's awesome and the other one's like, nah, it's not that big of a deal. This bike's just cool. So getting everybody on the same page and planning out kind of what you want as a result, I think is a bigger, more important thing. The business case later, okay, hey, we are able to make this capital investment because we're providing a service is great. And it does do great things, but I don't know that it's really going to, right off the bat from the investment, just beget success. And I'm not belittling it, Greg, what you're saying. I mean, there's a lot more to it.
To be clear, Damon, I meant investment in doing fit, not investment in buying a bicycle.
Oh, okay, I got you.
If that was what came across, that's not what I meant to say.
Okay, sorry, that's how I took it. So yeah, so I guess to echo that point, Steve, I think it's more or less what do you want to do with it? What do you want to provide to people? Okay, what do you want the results to be? How can you get the team and your staff all to talk about it the same way, and decide on how it's going to impact that piece, right? Every opportunity in the shop, from sales to service, is an opportunity to talk about how fit is incorporated. So if you can get that consistency going, then I think you're more likely to see a level of success and return. And then you can add on to that and say, hey, I'm going to provide more for customers through this. Because I know, Greg, you weren't saying this, but I hate to see the kind of the business case of like the ROI of a tool. Like, I love tools for efficiency and what it provides, but I don't like to put them in a sense of ROI to you. I more or less want to say you're gonna devote this amount of time or this space, or we're gonna train these employees. But thinking about ROI should really be thinking about what am I providing the customer and what is going to be their lifetime of return and relationship and connection versus what am I using to get there? Because anything better than nothing is good, right? Anything better than horrible is going to be good. So if I go to Greg and he does 3 hours and I've had nothing before, it's going to be awesome. If I go to you and you at least be like, Damon, your arms are straight out, dude. That is not cool. We're going to move you back. And I go, Steve, this is amazing. Like, I don't know the difference between those two things, right? So you got to provide something and be consistent with it, and then you can build.
Awesome conversation. I love this. I love this. November 19th, that's when we're coming back. We're coming back November 19th. I put Greg and Damon's email in the chat box. Reach out to them, right, guys? It's okay.
Please, anytime.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
I'll be back.
I wish we had another hour. Spread the word. Have a great day. Thank you for being here. Go kick butt. And thank you for keeping it PG-13. All right. See you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.